Good afternoon, Debbie.
Good afternoon, Michelle.
I am so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me today on Michelle's Conversations That Matter.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I am so happy to know you. I remember meeting you. We did the million, what was it called? The million,
Million Women Mentors.
that's what it was,
Yeah.
Million Women Mentors. And Beth had introduced me to you through that. And it was just such a great experience. And I learned a ton from you. And I was just so impressed with you. And I was like, I gotta have her on. I gotta have her on my show. I want her to talk about some of the things that we spoke about in that conversation together. So I'm thrilled that you said yes and joining me. So just before we dive in, we're going to talk about this topic of unrelenting standards. And I know so many people in my life will be able to relate to this because I know a lot of type A people, and let's just face it, I think a lot of us can relate to a topic like this. But before we dive in, just a little bit about the series and what I do professionally. So I created Michelle's Conversations That Matter to really elevate the conversation around mental health and well-being and really have people have a different relationship to brain health. I have people on from all walks of life, from, female leaders and executives like yourself to clinicians educating us on different types of mental illnesses. And what I get to do professionally is I work with organizations to help them recenter their employees and really educate leaders on how to engage in conversations with people if they notice that they might be struggling. Just building more compassion in the workplace. So that's what I get to do professionally. So would you take a moment, Debbie, just introduce yourself, who you are, where you live, and what you do for a living?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. And like I said, I'm thrilled to be here. So my name is Debbie Morris. My actual name is Deborah, but I go by Debbie. Um, Deborah is really, my parents used to yell at me using Deborah instead of Debbie. So I shy away from that a bit. Yeah, so I'm Debbie Morris, and I live in Brooklyn, New York. I actually spend my time between Brooklyn and South Jamesport, which is on the North Fork of Long Island. Definitely during COVID, we spent a lot more time out here. So now I say that I kind of split my home, if you will. I have two children. I'm married with two children. I have a 17-year-old, Sophia, who has Down syndrome. And I have a 15-year-old, Ben, who basically runs the entire house. I married an Englishman, actually. And it's because I had the privilege of living overseas when I was with one of my former employers. And we met on what he would call a drunken night out. What I would call was a kind of a broker meeting. But so I then ended up dragging him here to the U.S. after that. I work for Verisk, which is a data analytics provider for the insurance industry. So I've spent my entire 31 years in insurance, having spent 26 years with a large international carrier, and then I was a broker. And now, if you will, I'm a vendor partner to insurance companies. So I really feel like I've been able to see, the whole life cycle of insurance, and that's been really great. And I think one thing I'm really proud of is through my daughter and advocating for her, I'm a co-founder of a not-for-profit, which is called Gigi's Playhouse. It's located up in Harlem in New York City, and we provide free therapeutic programming to people of all ages with Down syndrome, and run various programs for their family members and their caregivers as well. So I'm pretty proud of that. I think it's important to give back.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You hold such a high level position, and you're a mom. And most people out there are like probably saying, "How does she do it all? How does she hold this position and is a mother of two?" It's common, but tell us a little bit about your family. What joys do you get being a mom, having your two children? What do you love about being a mom?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, there are really, first of all, I always wanted to be a mom, right? So I knew right away. And just, I think it's such a special role because obviously it's a very critical role, right? We're helping to form human beings, right? And trying to instill excellent values and, true appreciation for humanity and acceptance. I love that. I love being able to influence. Before, I would say when I was much younger, I used to want to be a teacher. So I think that is probably also why I love being a mom, because you do get to do some teaching. Now, I'm not going to lie. I don't have perfect children. They definitely stress me out at times, but I think overall I get a real joy out of, being able to lead them through life to a certain time, especially with my son. With my daughter, Sophia, it's a little bit different, obviously.
Yeah.
I envision her being living with us for a very long time. But, of course, we'll see. She's a senior now in high school. But I don't know how I got so lucky to be given the privilege of being her mother.
Mm.
And I say that because we weren't expecting a child with Down syndrome. And of course, it was a huge shock. And, all of those, hopes and dreams you had, and they change. But wow, it's magnificent being with her. And different from my son, she has taught me so much. I mean, her emotional intelligence is really something else. And she can read your feelings. I'll come in and I'll say, "Oh, I had a bad day." And she says, "Do you have a headache? Do you need to lie down?" Whereas my son is like, "What's for dinner?" But yeah, it's just the empathy she exudes. And also one thing that we really take from her is, stopping and smelling the roses. I mean, I remember vividly last year, I was rushing her out to get the bus to go to school. And she's like, "Wait, wait." And she looks down at my feet, which were in slippers, and she says, "Nice toes," because I had had a pedicure the day before. And I thought, now that's pretty cool, right? So meanwhile, the bus is honking. It's a Brooklyn street, the traffic is built up behind the bus. But it's just been a wonderful joy. And again, challenging in different ways,
Sure.
of course, right?
Right.
But really wonderful. She teaches me more than I could ever teach her.
That's amazing. I have a friend who has a little boy with Down syndrome, and it is a different experience. Um, I can only imagine. I don't know, so I can appreciate the fact that you can see, you can learn from that experience, and see the gift in being able to say, I get to be, her mom,
Oh yeah,
and it's perfect.
it's perfect.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So let's talk a little bit about work. What excites you about being a senior vice president at Verisk?
Well, when I came to Verisk 3.5 years ago, to this day, I say it was the best career move I ever made. And I say that just because it's a company with amazing values, and they really resonate with me. And my job allows me to talk to a lot of customers, which I've always gotten a thrill out of being customer facing, right? Because I am, kind of type A and pretty social. But at the same time, I get to lead a big group of people. And first of all, I lead a group of people, which I like to say that I'm able to teach them something, but at the same time, they're always teaching me something. And I am able to help influence kind of what products we have. The collaboration on my team is extraordinary, and nobody is afraid to roll up their sleeves and get involved with some, a project or a difficult issue to really help it get solved, both for the customer and for the company. I mentor a lot of people, which I really appreciate doing, both within my own company as well as within the greater marketplace, insurance marketplace. And I think that's, I wish more leaders were more giving of their time that way. I appreciate that everyone's time is very busy, and so is mine. But I really try to take time for those mentoring meetings, because we need to create the next, the next generation of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way we can do that well is by giving of our time and ourselves. Right. So I feel like I have such a well-rounded job where every day looks a little bit different, but there's always a couple things during the day that I'm doing that really excite me. I mean, there's always the stuff you have to do, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But on whole, I mean, there's much more that excites me than the you must do this.
Yeah. So what do you think? I know we had this conversation in the panel we did, but like, what do you think nowadays it means to be a strong female leader in the workplace?
Yeah. So when I was younger, coming up through the leadership ranks, I remember someone said, "Well, it's easy. You just have to act like a man." And I thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even back then, I thought it was ridiculous.
Hmm.
Um, I really think, and I sometimes think we overuse this. I think authenticity is the key to good leadership. And I've always believed that. I've always tried to be transparent and show my true self. Um, I appreciate that there are a lot of leaders who are introverts and don't care to share a lot of themselves, and that is fine. For me, I think really being transparent and authentic makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I also think a strong amount of empathy is important. And I think a lot of people learned it during the pandemic, just in terms of what people were going through, and we were all from home. And I remember, at Verisk, we did a lot of, kind of helping leaders understand how to have some conversations over the phone to make sure people were doing well. And I just thought I always had that covered because I always had that kind of empathetic streak in me. And I am not saying that I'm not that I'm a pretty tough leader as well. People know, but on the other side, I really try to balance it with a large degree of empathy. And look, of course, any leader, not just female, but any leader, really needs to know their stuff, right? They need to know the subject matter. I don't think they need to know it, intimately, because I think you can, if you're leading people, I think you can do it without really having a huge amount of experience in the underlying subjects. But obviously business acumen, relationship building. I mean, there's a whole host of general skill sets that one must have.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you focus a lot on authenticity and empathy, because I think that those are the two things that really will make a difference for an organization, especially when it comes to, emotional well-being and mental health. I mean, the last thing people want to feel like is that they're not understood for what they're dealing with, because we're all complex human beings and we're all dealing
Yes.
with something. There's something. If it's not right now, it's going to happen next month. So I love that. And I have always appreciated those leaders in my life who have extended empathy to me, because, and were courageous enough to be authentic and be real and be honest and be a little bit vulnerable, because it made me feel like I wasn't so alien if I was dealing with something.
Yes. And actually, thank you for mentioning vulnerability. I think that's an important characteristic that I probably left out. I think the ability to be vulnerable is extremely important. And look, when I started Veris 3.5 years ago, I came into it to a tremendous group of people who clearly knew much more about what they do than I did, and still do today, right? But I had no problem. I mean, I would just have meeting after meeting, asking questions, question. It was like, firing round after round, and it was fine. And even to this day, when I don't understand something, I say, remind me. I know we might have spoken about it, but just remind me, because it's, why wouldn't I strive to find out the answer rather than pretend?
Yeah. Forget about the looking good and the ego. We got to get rid of that
No.
stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So we are here to talk about this unrelenting standards trap. When you and I met, you spoke about this on the panel we were on, and it was just very interesting to me. And so when I reconnected with you and I said, Debbie, what should we talk about that could really make a difference for people? And you were like, unrelenting standards, Michelle. And I said, okay, great. So talk to us a little bit about, what does that mean? What does it mean to have unrelenting standards? What have you learned with this particular topic?
It's so sadly not enough. And I probably wanted to talk about it because I still need to work on it, and I think it became so clear to me during the very early dark days of the pandemic. And, my son was on virtual school, which he could do on his own. My husband and I were both working. We had a desk in a bedroom and a desk in the living room. But Sophia needed help. She needed help getting on her virtual classes. She needed help. And for some reason, there was a lot of homework that year. She needed help doing the homework. And at the same time, my husband is helpful, but the majority of the cooking, the going to the grocery store, I mean, I'm sure when he watches this, he'll argue with me, but the majority of it did fall to me. And I remember clearly my father, who's 88, said, how does it feel to be a homemaker now? Because when I would go to work every day, I wouldn't be cooking dinner. And, obviously I was cooking dinner. I said, okay, Dad, I'm a working mom. I don't know if I call myself a homemaker exactly, but yeah, I throw something on the table every night. 3 out of 4 nights it's hot, and the last night it's pizza, right? So, but what I found during that time was, and the company was great. If you needed to, not work between 10 and 11 because you had to help your child, then that's what you did. But I just couldn't come around to that. I did not want to let down, or what I thought would be letting down people at Verisk or my customers or clients or my team by saying, yeah, I can't do that call at 10 because I got to do something with Sophia. It took me way too long to get to that part. And so I was trying to do all these different things at once. And then, let's face it, that sourdough starter was all over social media. And I thought, I cannot believe I haven't made a sourdough yet. I went out, I bought yeast, I did the whole thing. And I thought, I am nuts. Like, I am nuts. And it occurred to me that this standard I had for myself, which was, even though times were difficult and new and we had never experienced this before, and I wasn't a teacher of a special needs child, I'm not even patient enough. And then I'm cooking every night because cereal's not good enough. And I just thought, this is insane. And, coming to like May or June, I was like, I'm going to have a breakdown. I mean, this is not, and I really try to hold it together, right? Because I'm trying to hold it together for everybody in the family and, and be encouraging and, especially to my 15-year-old. And I just thought, no, this is for the birds. Mm-hmm. Because the reality is that unrelenting standard, it just kills your mental health.
Yeah.
And even if it's not, I mean, I have some anxiety anyway, so it made me more anxious. I wasn't sleeping well, it's just not healthy for us.
Right.
But I will confess that to this day, I'm still not great at it, because there are times when I say, okay, this on a Saturday, right? Yeah. Non-work. I'm going to do this, that, and the, my dad's coming over for dinner. I'm going to make a lasagna. So he has a lasagna for the rest of the week, blah, 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 blah. And it gets to 5 o'clock and I haven't hit the grocery store yet. And I'm like, I said to myself, I'd make that lasagna. I didn't tell him, so he's not looking forward to it, but I got to get to the grocery store.
Yes.
My husband's like, do you really need to do that? You're making him dinner tonight. Tell him you'll make him something next week. Right. And that's just a little small, maybe even a silly example, but that is an unrelenting standard. That, because then I was like an anxious mess, and he walks in the house and just like, relax. He didn't even know you were going to do it.
Yeah.
So what's the problem? Now, granted, my husband has very few like anxieties at all. So God bless him. I should be more like him. But it's something that I have to work on each and every day. And I would imagine there are a lot of us out there that some days are better than next. Some days are better than, tomorrow will be better. I'll be like, maybe I'll just do this today.
Yes.
But it's a trap. And I think certain personalities get caught in that trap, and it spirals out of control. And then mental health suffers. And let's face it, there's enough around us today to be slightly depressed and anxious anyway, right? So why do we have to add that on?
Right.
Why do we have to add that?
And I think it's also, are these standards compromising our peace? Could we better use the time for something that's going to support our balance, our well-being? These are all things, but I think the struggle I can speak, for women, is the guilt, right? Like the guilt that you did not make that lasagna for your father, like the guilt that comes in and goes, oh man, but I really wanted to do that. But you know what? At what expense are you going to push yourself to do that? And that's the question I think we have to ask ourselves.
And it's not just, it's in our personal lives and in our work lives.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there are times my assistant says, Why do you accept meetings so that you're 9 to 5 in half-hour meetings all day long, including through lunch? And why don't you push back a little more? And I said, well, because if someone calls and say they really need to talk to me and I see that I have 12 to 12:30 free, I'm going to give. She said, but you do need a break
Yeah.
just to breathe, right? So maybe
Yeah.
step outside, get some air. And so it's both of those ways. So I just had a call with her today to say, you're helping me, keep at it. I need to get better, at least leaving an hour at some point during the day. A lot of people suffer from it. I'm going to continue really thinking about it and trying to work on it.
Right. Right. I think that you just talking about it with me today is the first step, because we get present to the fact that if we could just lighten up a little and loosen up these standards that we have, or these expectations that we put on ourselves. I mean, let's face it, I've done the same thing where it's like you could just order out, or you can just pick something up. You don't have to go and make something, even though, you want to in your heart. It's like, think about the impact on you to do something like that, and maybe try to simplify it, because at the end of the day, we only have one thing, and that's like our balance and our mental health and our
Yes.
well-being. And then we're not good to anyone around us if we're not preserving that.
And you can't be present when your mind is racing with things you think you should be doing.
Right.
Right? What do they say? Don't should on yourself.
It's so true.
It's true. If I'm spending time with Sophia, how can I be really present playing a game or reading or cards, whatever we're doing, if I'm thinking about, oh man, I said that I would do that, or oh man, I really wanted to do that for them.
Right.
It's just not healthy. And I do think the whole being present thing is a huge issue we have these days. I mean,
Yeah.
I see it in myself. I see it in both kids and my husband. And it's really, it takes away from good quality time together.
Right. Right. It's the overextending of ourselves, the overscheduling of ourselves.
Yes.
How about scheduling a day to not do anything, and then, ignore the fact that you might want to feel guilty for not doing anything, when really you're actually doing a world of good for your balance and your brain,
Yes.
because you're thoroughly recharging yourself so you can be more intentional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So important. So important. So you're still working on it. And I love that you're very vulnerable and honest about that, because listen, most of us are. We're works in progress, right?
I'll be working on it forever, but I'm going to keep at it.
Exactly. So what would you want your leadership legacy to look like, Debbie?
So I think if I had to pick one thing, it would be, wow, she created a lot of leaders.
Yes.
And because again, I think it's really important. And I remember years ago, I worked in Hong Kong as well with the insurance carrier, and I went and realized that the team needed a lot of training. And I spent years training people, the 3 years I was there. And to this day, I know my name still kind of banders about in certain files out there because of what I had taught the teams. And first of all, it's an amazing feeling knowing you've made an impact. But that's the right thing to do, because we want what is it, all boats to lift, right?
Yes.
And all boats need to lift. Well, then you have to give people the tools.
Yeah.
And I just think, again, with on the leadership front, let's create the next set of leaders the way we want them to be, right? And let's teach them what we did well, and let's teach them what we didn't do well. And of course, it's a totally different world now for them than it was 20 years ago when I became a leader, right? When there was no phone, there was no social media. But it's possible, right? It's possible for people like me to help get the next group of leaders to be better than we are.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt. We just need to invest in them by sharing of ourselves, our time, and our experiences. So I would love for that to be my legacy, that, wow, she created a lot of leaders.
Now, here's the question. Do you ever share with your direct reports your unrelenting standards struggle?
I'm going to say sort of.
Okay.
And I think it depends on the person. So I
Right.
think I have definitely shared it with a couple people
Okay.
um, with whom we just have that kind of relationship and it works.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to lie, they're women,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And maybe that says something.
Right.
I don't think I've really thought about it, but so yes and no.
Yeah.
I don't think the others would be surprised to hear about it.
Yeah, I guess I think about, guiding other leaders and all the things that are unspoken that you wish a leader would have told you. And like something like this is like it's like the keys to the castle. Like, don't become like me with these unrelenting standards. Let me give you a tip. And imagine if you were like the younger version of yourself and someone told you there's no way to win at this game if you
Yeah.
continue this way. And I always just appreciated those leaders who were willing to just be like, let me give you the down low. And I was like, wow, because that's how they succeed as well as all of the other, acumen and, leadership skills. They need the other stuff as well, I would think.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We are quickly coming to the end of our time. Oh my goodness. What other thoughts or things do you want to share with the audience that's watching? Anything else you want to share about the topic or yourself?
Yeah, I guess I would, I guess I would really, I guess I would probably share um, a little bit more on the empathy and the kindness side.
Yeah.
Um, I just realized during this pandemic that you don't really know what's going on in people's lives and the challenges that they're dealing with, um, and being kind and empathetic goes such a long way, and yeah, it just goes such a long way, and I think that if we could all just be a little bit more like that, I mean, I know it sounds like corny and a Hallmark card, but the world really would be a better place.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot, right? I think about that a lot. And this is not to say I'm the nicest person or whatnot, but I really try to care about other people. And I think that kindness aspect just,
Hmm.
no
Hmm.
one's ever going to say she was too kind,
Right. Right.
right? No one.
I think that
So,
also requires you to. I know back in the day when I worked at a company called Organon, I had a friend who said to me, Michelle, you're AB, you're all business all the time. And I needed to learn to suspend that a little bit and get into the world of other people before I got right into the business aspect of it. So I think what you're saying is so spot on because we are so driven to achieve and to fulfill on expectations and goals that
yes,
sometimes that is the first thing we lead with instead of the empathy, the compassion, the checking in, the human side.
yes. And I would just add one other thing. I mean, I've obviously been in the insurance industry for a very long time, and the one good thing to come out of the pandemic is how companies really now are trying to become much more in tune with the mental health of their employees in a way I've never seen before. And not just Verisk, which has been outstanding at it, but so many other companies realize, wow, we need to really jump on this mental health bandwagon and it's here to stay,
Yeah.
and we're going to do what we can to make sure, our employees are healthy from a mental health standpoint. And so, it's probably been overdue, but you know what? We finally have done something and it's very encouraging to so many of us in the industry.
Yes. Amen. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, there was a Harvard Business Review article that said 42% of the global workforce has experienced a decline in their mental health since the beginning of the pandemic.
Mm,
That's a lot of people for companies to not
yes.
pay attention to it and provide a little bit more support.
Yes.
And it will manifest itself in disengaged employees, unhealthy employees, people that go out on disability, So I agree with you. I think that is the silver lining with COVID is the light has been shined on this, and we're now needing to take the action to help people.
100%. And we should be encouraged by that.
Yes, yes, amen to that. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your time and coming on and sharing yourself with us. Appreciate your time.
It was so fun, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I will look forward to staying in touch with you. And thank you again for all that you're doing as a leader and for sharing your story with your family with us.
No problem. Have a great weekend.
You too. You
Take
too.
care.